Brooke Logan's world shattered the moment the doctor's words echoed in her mind like a death knell. The tests confirm it. Your condition is serious, Brooke. In that sterile examination room, with phase chart flickering on the monitor and pale sunlight slanting through Venetian blinds, Brooke felt her knees go weak. She clutched the edge of the exam table as panic and dread surged through her chest. Her life, her legacy, her love, all suddenly imperiled. Ridge Forrester, the man she had chosen above all others, whose steady presence had been her refuge through every tempest, could not bear to see her diminish, could not watch the light fade from her eyes. So, in the throes of her private anguish, Brooke made a decision as brutal as it was selfless. She would sever the bond that had carried them through heartbreak and renewal. She would push Ridge away, to spare him the agony of watching her crumble. That night, she sat alone in the spacious quiet of their master bedroom, the late spring breeze stirring the sheer curtains, and she rehearsed the words that would break his heart. "I'm sick, Ridge, seriously sick, and I can't let you watch me suffer. I love you too much to let you endure that." When Ridge returned home from the office late, fatigue etched on his handsome features, he found Brooke poised on the edge of their bed, hair tumbling over her shoulders, eyes shadowed with secret grief. She spoke with trembling restraint, each syllable a blade cutting through them both, and Ridge's heart clenched as he heard the confession she had buried, a diagnosis that threatened to steal her future. Brooke's voice cracked as she declared that she could not, in good conscience, drag him into her decline. Ridge, aghast and desperate, reached for her hand, his voice thick with disbelief and anger. "You can't do this, Brooke. We face everything together." But Brooke, tears pooling in her eyes, whispered that this was the one battle she would fight alone. Ridge's protests died on his lips as he watched her turn away, her shoulders trembling with grief, and he realized with mounting horror that she intended to cut him loose forever. Stunned and heartbroken, Ridge left the house that night under a moonless sky, his love for Brooke unbroken, but her resolve ironclad. In the days that followed, the mansion's halls echoed with his anguished pacing and Brooke's suppressed sobs. She immersed herself in medical consultations, confidentially consulting specialists and planning every possible course of treatment, determined to shield Ridge from the storm. Yet as she tended to her private war, her strength waned. Sleepless nights, tests, and the weight of her secret pressed upon her like a vice, and in her weakest moments, she found herself seeking comfort where she might not have before. Deacon Sharp, whose own betrayals and repentances had woven him into the threads of her life in unexpected ways. Deacon, once the architect of heartbreak, now an unlikely confidant, offered a listening ear and gentle understanding when no one else could bridge the chasm between Brooke's fear and her need for solace. Their meetings began innocently enough, coffee in the garden room, long walks under the stars where Brooke's burden lifted slightly in the flush of twilight. Deacon's presence was a balm. His rough-edged compassion reminded her she was still alive, still deserving of care and tenderness. Then, one dusky evening, with the jasmine-scented breeze swirling around them and the world hushed, Deacon brushed a strand of hair from Brooke's face, his fingers lingering against her cheek, and she leaned into that touch. Their eyes met, heavy with unspoken longing and raw vulnerability, and in that instant, the barrier she had erected between herself and Ridge dissolved. They kissed, an urgent, desperate kiss born of two souls seeking refuge in each other's arms. It was a kiss that spoke of fear, of mortality, of the fierce need to feel alive when life felt so perilously close to slipping away. But fate conspired against secrecy. Unbeknownst to Brooke and Deacon, Ridge, unsettled by Brooke's cold distance and abrupt withdrawal, had turned to Taylor Hayes, his steadfast friend and often beleaguered wife, to seek clarity, to find the emotional anchor that Brooke was refusing to provide. On that very evening, Ridge arrived unexpectedly at Deacon's cottage, his footsteps silent on the gravel path, his thoughts a tumult of jealousy and dread. He had come for answers, but what he found was the tableau of Brooke and Deacon locked in a kiss beneath the wisteria arbor, the night air thick with their breath and the scent of blossoms. Ridge's world tilted off its axis. The betrayal cut deeper than any illness could. He staggered back, unseen, as the lovers' embrace broke apart in a gasp of shame. Brooke's eyes widened when she saw Ridge's shadow by the gate. Deacon's face paled with the shock of discovery. In that instant, every secret, every whispered confession, every attempt to spare Ridge from pain was laid bare, and it exploded. Brooke fled the cottage, her gown billowing like a wounded bird, while Ridge confronted Deacon in a fury fueled by heartbreak and rage. Words were hurled like daggers. Ridge accusing Brooke of infidelity, accusing Deacon of preying on her vulnerability, accusing the universe of conspiring to shatter his life. In the distance, Taylor, drawn by the commotion, arrived to witness the denouement of Brooke's self-imposed exile and Ridge's rediscovered rage. News of the kiss spread through the Foresters like wildfire. Steffi gasped, Liam clenched his fists in silent fury, and the whispers in the Forester boardroom spoke of scandal and betrayal. Brooke, confronted by the wreckage she had wrought, retreated to her hospital consultations, the walls closing in as she faced not only her mortality but the destruction of her marriage. Ridge, his heart torn between fury and undying love, found solace in Taylor's unwavering devotion. Taylor, whose own heart had known the sting of Ridge's lingering feelings for Brooke, held him through sleepless nights, promising that she would never abandon him. And yet, in the quiet moments when Taylor's back was turned, Ridge's mind drifted back to Brooke, her laugh, her courage, the way she had held him through storms. Could he ever truly let her go? Could he forgive the kiss born of fear and desperation? Meanwhile, Brooke, weakened by grief and her growing illness, realized the magnitude of her mistake. In pushing Ridge away, she had condemned herself to face both mortality and abandonment alone. Shame and regret mingled with her physical pain as she saw Ridge's silhouette in her memory, striding away from the ruin they had made of their shared dreams. Determined to fight not only for her life, but for the love she still held for Ridge, Brooke resolved to tell him everything, the terror of her diagnosis, her misguided attempt to shield him, and the moment of weakness that led her into Deacon's arms. She would risk humiliation and rage to reclaim the truth, for without honesty there could be no hope. As the sun rose on a new day in Los Angeles, the players in this high-stakes drama found themselves at a crossroads. Ridge stood at the Forester Mansion's grand balcony, the Pacific shimmer below, Taylor's hand resting gently on his arm. Beside him, the promise of steadfast partnership. Behind him, the ghost of a love he once thought would last forever. Brooke, frail but unbroken, prepared to step back into Ridge's life, ready to face his judgment. Deacon, remorseful and protective, watched from the shadows, a silent apology in his heart. In the crucible of truth and betrayal, the question remained, could Ridge look past the kiss and embrace the woman who chose solitude over shared suffering? Would Brooke's confession of her cancer and her misguided flight inspire compassion or confirm his worst fears? And could Taylor's steadfast love withstand the echo of a past that refused to stay buried? In the end, it will not be illness, nor secrecy, nor scandal that determines their fate, but the fragile, unbreakable threads of love, forgiveness, and the courage to face life's greatest trials together. Ridge stood at the edge of the balcony, the morning sun glinting off the Pacific beyond. Taylor's slender hand still resting against the small of his back, as if anchoring him to a life he'd been ready to leave behind. He closed his eyes, recalling Brooke's face etched with pain, the raw grief in her voice when she begged him not to watch her die, and then the shocking betrayal of Deacon's arms, the kiss that had torn his world apart. His heart thundered in his chest, each beat echoing with the memory of Brooke's confession and the secret she'd kept. Yet beneath the fury and heartbreak lay something softer, something that dared him to remember the years they'd shared, the laughter in their vineyard, the warmth of her hand in his, the strength she'd shown when storms threatened to drown them. Could that love truly be erased by one desperate moment? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed, a message from Thomas Forrester. "Meet me at the office. Urgent." Ridge looked at Taylor, whose steady gaze invited him back into reality. "I need to handle this," he said softly, but Taylor simply nodded, her eyes kind yet wary. He departed, leaving her alone on the balcony, where memories of Brookline and his silent vow to protect her battled with the fear that he was on the precipice of losing both women forever. Inside Forrester Creations, Thomas met Ridge in the dimly lit conference room, documents spread across the table. But Ridge's mind was elsewhere, replaying Brooke's trembling silhouette as she revealed her illness, her trembling promise to face death alone. Thomas, sensing his father's distraction, hesitated, then nodded toward a folder stamped Oakley Foundation Emergency Meeting. The foundation's funds had been frozen in light of Brooke's dismissal from the board after Deacon's scandal, a technical complication that threatened to derail the charity gala they were planning that very weekend. Ridge's jaw tightened. Even as his world was unraveling, the business demanded his attention. But he forced himself to focus, acknowledging that this gala, meant to honor Stephanie and fund life-saving research, now hung in the balance, an irony he could not ignore given Brooke's condition. He agreed to expedite the legal work, then excused himself to return home, mind buzzing with contracts even as his heart warred between Taylor's steadfast devotion and the woman he had vowed to stand by through life's ultimate trial. At the Logan estate, Brooke lay in the soft glow of sunrise, wrapped in a cashmere throw, laptop open to a video call with her oncologist. The specialist delivered a new treatment plan, aggressive but experimental, with a 30% chance of extension if begun immediately. Brooke's hands shook as she absorbed the information. Hope, at last, flickered in her chest, but it came tethered to the knowledge that Ridge had not yet heard her full confession. She closed her eyes and steeled herself, vowing that no matter how terrifying, she would face Ridge with absolute honesty. She picked up her phone and dialed. Ridge answered on the second ring, surprise registering in his voice. "We need to talk," Brooke began, voice steadier than she felt. "No secrets this time. I want you here." Ridge hesitated, the weight of his own wounds heavy, but he heard the courage beneath her tone and agreed to meet her at the cliffside where they had once declared their love under a starlit sky. Meanwhile, Deacon retreated to a secluded cabin by the creek, racked with guilt. He replayed the moment he kissed Brooke, knowing she was vulnerable, and the shock in Ridge's eyes when he discovered them. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through old photos of himself and Brooke, before the horrors of Sheila's return, before Luna's machinations, when love had been simpler, even if forbidden. He typed a message to Brooke. "I'm sorry. If there's anything I can do to help you make things right with Ridge, I will." He hesitated, then deleted it, realizing that any further contact would only deepen the wounds. He looked at the creek's tranquil flow and resolved to step aside, to fight for his own redemption by giving Brooke the space to win back her husband, even if it meant losing her forever. As dusk gathered, Ridge arrived at the cliff's edge, where the ocean roared beneath and the sky bled coral and violet. Brooke stood at the railing, hair swept back by the breeze, eyes glistening but unbroken. Ridge approached quietly, each footstep echoing with memories. When he reached her, the silence stretched between them, a living thing. Finally, Brooke spoke. She recounted the cancer, the fear that had driven her to spare him suffering, the moment of weakness with Deacon, and the regret that had consumed her ever since. Ridge listened, his heart constricting, as she laid bare her soul. When she finished, the world seemed to still. Ridge's voice was low when he finally spoke. "You broke my trust, Brooke. You left me alone when I needed you most, then you betrayed me with him." Her shoulders slumped, tears cascading down her cheeks, but she met his gaze. "I did, and I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you, but all I did was push you away and betray your love." Ridge turned, looking out over the vast expanse, the wind tugging at his jacket. He closed his eyes, inhaled, and exhaled slowly. Then he looked back at Brooke, eyes shining with hurt and love. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he admitted, "but I do know that I can't lose you to this disease or to your own fear." He stepped forward and took both her hands. "We'll face this together, Brooke. Every test, every treatment, every moment. But you have to let me in." Brooke's sobs broke free as Ridge drew her into his arms, the last light of day haloing them. They stood there, entwined, two wounded souls clinging to the promise of love's resilience. Somewhere in the distance, Taylor, wrapped in the silent darkness of her own grief, watched from afar, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. She realized in that moment that Ridge's heart, though battered and bruised, had chosen Brooke. And though it broke her, she understood that some loves are forged in fire and cannot be extinguished. Later, at the Logan residence, Ridge and Brooke entered hand in hand, the echoes of the cliffside confession still ringing in the halls. Taylor arrived shortly after, summoned by Ridge's whispered apology earlier in the evening. The three stood in the foyer, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Ridge spoke first. "Taylor, you've been my rock. I can't thank you enough for being here when I thought I needed you." Taylor gave a small, sad smile. "You know I'll always be here for you, Ridge." Brooke stepped forward, voice trembling but clear. "Taylor, I'm sorry for what happened. You didn't deserve to be pulled into my mistakes." Taylor nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand love is never simple. I hope we can find a way forward, whatever that means." The moment hung, raw and fragile, as Ridge looked from Brooke to Taylor. He knew that healing would not be instantaneous, trust takes time, and forgiveness does not erase pain. But Brooke's hand in his, warm and sure, gave him hope that they could rebuild. Taylor's presence reminded him that some chapters must end so others can begin. In the weeks that followed, Brooke started her treatment, supported by Ridge every step of the way. Deacon, true to his resolve, respected the boundaries set by Brooke and Ridge, choosing instead to focus on his own journey of healing, seeking therapy, making amends quietly where he could, and finding peace in solitude. Taylor, graceful in her retreat, focused on her career at the hospital and her own personal growth, remaining a steadfast friend to Brooke and Ridge when needed but allowing them space to reclaim their life together. The scandal faded from the Forrester headlines as the gala funding crisis was averted through Ridge's quick action and Brooke's public announcement of her treatment with unvarnished honesty, earning admiration and sympathy in equal measure. And through it all, Ridge and Brooke rediscovered the fragile strength of love tested by fear, betrayal, and mortality. Their bond, reforged in the crucible of truth, emerged tempered and resilient, a testament to the promise they had made at the cliff's edge to face every storm together, as partners, as lovers, as two hearts beating against the tide of fate. Only time would tell what new challenges lay ahead, but for now, they had each other, and sometimes that was more than enough.